The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Laura. Laura's going to tell us all about her life. So, Laura, if you can tell me when and where you were born, and if you can describe to me what it was like, where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So, Laura, you're in the room.
Thank you so much for having me here, Tim. It's fun to share some of those background stories. And so where I grew up, it was a small town in Bucks County, Pennsylvania called Levittown. A lot of people are familiar with Levittown because Levittown was one of the first planned communities for soldiers that were returning from World War II. And our home was built, I'm not sure exactly when it was built, but I was born in Abington, Pennsylvania. When I was 2 years old, we moved to Levittown. And I grew up in a neighborhood where it was family and friends, right? Our house was the middle of the block and all the kids played at our house. So elementary school, middle school, I went to school with a lot of friends, people that I had known all of my life from childhood. Going into high school was a big flip for me because we moved in my first year of high school. We moved to a whole new neighborhood, to Neshaminy. My parents had a house built in Langhorne, which is still part of the same community, Langhorne. And we moved to Langhorne when I was in high school. And it was really difficult getting to know new people. Like I knew no one in this high school of like 2,000 kids. It was a big school. There were over 700 kids in my graduating class. And it was very difficult for me to step into that 9th grade year and not know anybody. But luckily for me, I had made a few good friends in my homeroom. So, and my best friend, who's still my best friend, was in my homeroom, and she was my maid of honor, my wedding. So, making those connections and those friendships at first was very difficult for me, but I kind of put into practice some of the things that my dad taught me growing up was, if you don't have a friend, make a friend. If you don't know anyone, get to know someone. So that was kind of what I found. And even in high school, that elementary school, middle school, I was always involved in a lot of the different activities in the high school plays, in gym nights, there was always something going on. My brothers were always into baseball. I was into dance. There was always, that community woven into everything that I did. And what I found was when I went to high school, I had to figure out what the community was, right? Mm-hmm. So making those connections was important.
So let's just wind it back just a fraction, because we jumped into sort of high school and we've just sort of fuzzed over sort of the kindergarten and the elementary school. So can you remember much about your kindergarten? Because I guess it was a part of the same school as your elementary school.
Yeah, my elementary school, yes. Kindergarten. What the biggest thing that I remember about kindergarten was that I had the most amazing teacher. Her name was Mrs. Cease. And she was just loving and kind and gentle. And she was very involved in creating family feel, like that community feel within the classroom, and helping kids get to know one another and involving the parents, right? My mom actually went to work at my school when my youngest brother went to school. So I was one of 4 children. I had 3 brothers, and then there was me. So of course I'm the favorite girl in the family. Yeah. That the whole idea of family being involved in school was very, very important. I went to Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. It was a block and a half from my house. I would walk there with my brothers. I would walk home with my brothers. Who walks to school anymore, right?
Yeah. And I thought you got a lift every day.
Right.
To drive to school.
Right. I think the first time I took a school bus was when I went to 6th grade, which was middle school. So kindergarten through 5th was my elementary school. And I was very fortunate. I had Mrs. Cease, who was my favorite teacher of all time for not just kindergarten, but I also had her for 1st grade. Mm-hmm. So what I loved about that was that she knew me, she knew all my quirkiness, she was my friend, I felt safe. It was, and that sense of family was always there.
Yeah.
Third, fourth, and fifth grade, very same feel in that particular school. And then in middle school, again, my mom went to school when I went to school. She worked in my middle school at that point in time. And
did you feel intimidated?
I couldn't get away with anything. It was I could not get away with anything. My mom always found out stuff, you know. It's like, oh no. But it was fun. It was great to have her there because there was that sense of security and safety, you know, when your parent does work in the school. And even though I couldn't get away with anything, it was still important for me to have her there. And she was always that strong sense of that moral compass was always in there guiding my way. But she was also my advocate. And I have to say that because I remember this one Spanish teacher that I had who was really quick to run to my mom and tell her every little thing that I did wrong. And my mom finally told this Spanish teacher off and told her, look, you don't go run into all the other kids' parents when their kid does something wrong. You need to stop. Laura has to find her own way. So my mom was my advocate as well. So that was always encouraging to me. And I didn't know she told this teacher off until probably when I was in high school. My mom told me about what had transpired. One of my favorite things, and it's really interesting. I loved English when I was growing up, like just understanding writing. I loved writing. I would like write poems and stories and always being creative. That creative mind was always at work. And, you know, but I was also involved in all the school plays. I was in choir. I loved music. So all of those things that I got to experience in middle school really kind of came together and really started to help me define who I was at that point in time and really understanding what my passions were. I loved music. I loved dance. I loved being in school musicals. And the written word was always so amazing to me. I read like a fiend. I loved reading, like any kind of fiction stories always got me going. I think Nancy Drew was big at the time, right? So anytime a new Nancy Drew book came out, it was like, oh, gotta get it. I would save up my babysitting money for that. And, you know, so the idea that middle school was where I really kind of came into finding myself. And I had a really great core group of friends that I trusted and who trusted me. And then to have all that shaken up and move to high school where I wasn't sure, you know, I didn't know anybody, but I did know myself.
Yeah. So let's have a look at your theatre. I'm interested in your theatre. What plays did you put on, or what was your first play, and what part did you play in it?
So it's always funny because I always played a secondary part in the productions that we did. I was always either a dancer or in the chorus, and never really tried out for any of the major parts. So in middle school, we did Oklahoma, and we did South Pacific. Those were the two that I was in middle school. In high school, we did Gypsy, which was, I actually did try out for one of the strippers because I loved that really husky voice, right? And my choral teacher actually told me when he heard me singing, he said, oh my gosh, you have the voice of Gypsy Rosalie. So I wound up being an understudy for the main character, Gypsy Rosalie. So I did get to perform that, but it was like, I loved that deep husky emotion in her voice. That was always captivated me.
So did you nobble her to take the lead role?
No, I didn't. We were friends. I didn't want to do that. And it was.
Did you actually play it on the night?
I did. The understudies got to do like a second showing on a Saturday afternoon. So
you got the matinee, and they obviously the lead got the the prime spot of the evening, darling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of that was great. And I'll never forget, we were, I don't remember which play it was that we were doing, but I remember getting a phone call from my parents that my grandmother had passed away when we were performing one of the plays. And my brother was still in high school at the time with me, one of my older brothers. And we just didn't know what to do because we were both in the play. It was like the performance weekend. We weren't sure if we should, you know, what we should do. My mom insisted. She said, "Look, Grammy would want you to go on. So just play your heart out for Grammy." And that's what she would want, because she would want to be there in the audience. So I remember getting that phone. That was tough. That was a hard one.
Yeah. I'm surprised your parents didn't sort of wait until the following day when you'd finished the play.
Yeah.
I mean, if they'd have done that, I guess they would have felt that if they had waited to tell you, you might have blamed them at the time and one thing or another. It's difficult. Yeah, it's a difficult one to challenge. That's a challenging one.
Well, I think they made the right decision in letting us know, because they needed to go upstate to be with family. And then they had the choice of, you know, do we leave our kids to be home? You know, we were in high school at that time, so we could kind of take care of ourselves and yeah, kind of, if we weren't getting in trouble at the time. But you know, there's that. There's a whole other story there. But my brother, he was a senior in high school. I was a sophomore at the time. We had my youngest brother who wound up going with mom and dad upstate for Graham's funeral. But it was, I think it was the right decision for them to tell us what was going on. We knew that she was failing in health. We just, you know, didn't expect her passing so soon. So it was you know, that those are certain things that make a mark on your emotions. You know, I went through a lot when I was in high school, especially finding friends and you know, but the fact that I had such a good foundation from middle school of understanding who I was and what I loved, whether it was music or dance or, you know, being involved in the theater, and art was a big piece of my life. And I had a most amazing art teacher in high school who inspired me to follow my art, and the fact that I had a very good eye for linear and 3D art, you know, that the structures, I loved drawing buildings. Building was my passion. So she encouraged me to take a drafting class, an architectural drafting class. And at the time in high school, there were a lot of options for those technical type of classes. You know, so we had a lot of choices, and I had an amazing architectural design teacher, and that's what led me to go to trade school. And, you know, I stepped into earning my my associate degree in architectural interior and exterior design. And that's where I met my husband. So
let's just explore that last bit of your high school or your senior year. So you were taking, I guess, technical drawing.
Yes.
Which then led you on to, when you went to college, the college you went to, did you continue that technical drawing aspect on, or?
Yes, I did. Yes. Yeah. I took one semester, my senior year, I took architectural interior and exterior design. I absolutely loved it. I love drawing the 3D perspective drawings. I love drawing blueprints and doing site plans and things like that. So I really found, you know, that was really a passion for me. My art teacher was lovely, because she said to me, "Look, you're a really great artist, but it's hard to make money being an artist."
Yeah.
She said, "It's really hard to make money. Do that as a passion, do it on the side, but if you can put your art into something that will make money for you." And it made sense to me. And that was, you know, the catalyst for me going to architectural design school. So when I went to college, I went to American Institute of Design, and that was a recommendation from my architectural studies teacher from high school.
So where was that?
That was in Philadelphia, down at Frankfurt and Orthodox. I don't believe the school is there anymore. It's been was 1984 when I graduated from there. So yeah, that's a few years ago.
You're still a girl though.
Yes, I'm just, just trying to keep it young there. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, how long was the course? Was it a normal sort of 4 years there in college?
No, it's a truncated 4-year program. I'm sorry, a 3-year 3-year program, but I wound up finishing it in 2, because we could kind of work through a lot of the work through holidays, work through, put in certain amount of time, like extra time if you had to complete certain projects.
Yeah.
So if you can shorten your time on those projects, you could get through the courses that much faster. So I completed that, and I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed it. And again, I think the experience of having gone from a middle school into a new high school made it that much easier to go into trade school, because I had to make friends all over again.
Yeah.
So
that I guess was a positive that you could take from that part of your life, that you can go somewhere new and fit in, make friends. I guess that makes it a lot easier.
Right.
So you graduated in 2 years. What was the first job you did?
So my first job was actually, can I tell you a really quick story about when I was at drafting school?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people love this story. I married the teacher.
Is that loud?
But he wasn't my teacher. He taught another class. My husband had actually just recently graduated from the same school, and he came back as a student teacher in another class, in a mechanical engineering class. And I saw, when I first met him, I saw him walking through my class. I'm like, who is that? Who is that? And everybody's like, oh, well, he's the new teacher. I'm like, oh, okay. So my class and his class were playing softball. That was one of the things that we do would enjoy after school, was we would get together, play softball in the spring, and they invited him to play softball. Well, I tell everybody that he knocked me off my feet, literally, because I was running for second base. He was reaching out to catch a ball, and I ran smack dab into his arm. My glasses went flying. I wound up on my butt, but I made it to the base before he caught the ball. So I wasn't out. But that's how we met. And, on the baseball field. So playing softball. So it was, I love sharing that story, because when I tell people I married the teacher, everybody's like, you did what? Like, it wasn't my teacher.
So he picked you up, he dusted you off, and you fell in love with him. Is that it?
Yes, absolutely.
Did he fall in love with you at the same time, or did it take a bit of while?
It might have taken a little bit longer, but he didn't have a chance, because it's like, this is it. This is the guy. Yeah. So, and we're married over 35 years. So it's,
blimey.
Yeah. We're together almost 40 years. So yeah.
So that's like a double life sentence. So if you'd have killed him, you'd have been out in half the time.
No, I keep telling people, he's already trained. We get along really, really well. There's no reason not to keep him around. So he's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, you've obviously got him well trained and under the thumb to last that long.
He's awesome. We get along so well, and it's just, there's such a great balance in our marriage, and we love spending time together. So it's good. But you had asked me what my next job was. So
your first job once you left college, what was that?
So my first job once I left college was working in corporate America. I worked for a big company, RCA. A lot of people, it's no longer around, but a lot of people know who RCA is, know who the Nipper dog is, right? Yeah, RCA did a lot of electronic instruments, electrical instruments, a lot of musical instruments. The Nipper dog. When you see Nipper, you see him with the old Victrola, right?
Yeah.
People don't, a lot of young people don't know what a Victrola is. I'm like,
who knew?
Right? But hey, we had Nipper, so we understand who that is. But RCA was, RCA Music. They did a lot. They had branched out and done a lot of things. We were doing a lot of research, R&D. And my job for them was actually designing all of their facilities. So, I worked in property management, and I worked on a lot of the corporate facilities and the The research facilities where the buildings had to be specially treated for, like we did a lot of early technology when it came to computers. So I was designing these like massive computer rooms, how to understand what a Heale system was for fire suppression and all of that. And when you work in property management, there's so many moving parts. You're always coordinating with a dozen different people at any one given time and a lot of personalities to play with. So property management, project management came into play very heavily in my career right off the bat. And I loved working with RCA. I worked for them for 2.5 years, had a really great experience, really great boss. Charlie Didino was one of the best bosses I could have ever had. He was a mentor. He was also a father. You know, he was a father figure at work. He kind of protected me a lot. There was, a young woman working in corporate America at that point in time in the 80s. There were some scoundrels in the office that Charlie kind of put in their place. I didn't have to worry about that, anything like that happening. And he was really a really great guy to work for.
So how come that came to an end then?
I had a really great offer to work for a bank, and it was a substantial increase in salary for me. And at that time in my young career, I was looking at getting married. We had gotten engaged and we were looking to buy a house. And I met a woman who was head of property management for a bank in New Jersey. And she really encouraged me to come to work for her, which I was very happy to do. I loved working for the bank. I was with them for over 9 years. And my job there was project management, property management. I did the same thing, designed the banks, designed all the corporate offices, was very in tune with the idea of having banks that all look the same. Remember how banks, you would have you would know the name, right? But they all look different. Right, every branch, no matter where you went, you didn't really, if you didn't see their logo, you didn't know which bank it was. Well, now banks kind of have taken that template idea of the colors are all the same, the interiors are all the same, all the floor plans are the same. Well, we were kind of the spearhead of that with NatWest Bank, and we worked on all of the vision of creating a bank that was like a template. Like, so no matter what branch you went to, if it didn't have the sign on the building, you knew you were in our bank. So it was the opposite of how the old banking system used to be. So that was the biggest piece that I really enjoyed working with the folks that I worked with. I had the pleasure and the honor of working at Exchange Place when Exchange Place was first built in Jersey City. Now, Exchange Place is the high rise that's right on the waterfront at Exchange Place, One Exchange Place, and it faced the World Trade Center. So before 9/11, I worked in a building. I was like on one of the top floors, and my office literally looked over the World Trade Center every single day. We used to joke that we had the best view of all. Right? Because we got to look at New York City as opposed to them looking at the Jersey City waterfront, which the Jersey City waterfront now has taken on a whole new life of its own. There's a lot of beauty there. But at that time, our building was the only one that was pretty. The rest was kind of run down and dilapidated. As a matter of fact, the old Colgate building the old Colgate plant was right next door. And I'm pretty sure the old Colgate tube of toothpaste sign is still on the waterfront. But it was really interesting. My son was born in 1994, so way before 9/11 happened. And, so I had the privilege of sitting in those buildings. I knew people in the World Trade Center. I knew people who still worked there when 9/11 happened. But I would spend time in those buildings. As a matter of fact, the last day that I worked for the bank, I literally walked from the World Trade Center across town, down Wall Street to Water Street and back again, came back to my office. They had my baby shower. My husband picked me up from work. I went home and had my baby. So it was like my last day of work at the bank. And
you had the baby on the same day?
Yes, I did. I did. I did
Oh,
not know I was in labor. I'm like, I went into labor a little bit early with him. So yeah, he unexpected early delivery. I guess walking across Wall Street was not a smart idea.
well, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, so sitting around waiting for it to all happen.
Exactly.
Twiddling
Right.
your thumbs.
Yeah.
So once you finish work, you sort of twiddle your thumbs thinking,
Yeah.
oh, I should be doing something.
Yeah.
But you had a baby to look after. So I guess that took up a little bit of time at the time.
Yeah. And, so that's, I loved working at the bank. I loved being part of that building being built. Was amazing to me. My name is actually inscribed on one of the beams. Like, we got to sign the last beam that was put in place on the top of the building. That's the rarity. Like, a lot of people don't ever get to experience that. It's like, my name is on the last beam that was put in place in this building.
Yeah.
Because I had something to do with this beautiful building being brought to life.
Did you design it, or did you just design parts of it? The interiors and stuff like that? Or
yeah, we had some input on the actual construction, the exterior construction of the building, but the work that I did was on the interior. I worked on, we had the top 7 floors for the bank was our corporate offices. So I was very heavily involved in all the design and layout of the floor, each and every floor themselves. So, and the boardroom, we had a big round table. It was like Arthur's round table. It was a big round table. It was pretty cool. I used to tease one of our executives. I said, "Are you King Arthur or are you Lancelot?" And he would just laugh. He would never answer me. So I'm thinking there might have been something to this round table thing. So
where were you actually working from at that time while the building was being built? How far away was the offices?
My office was right next door. We actually had, there was a bank building that was built in the 1800s. It had one of the most massive bank vault doors, which was, I think there were only 2 in the whole world that were this size of a bank vault door. And the bank was still there, but our corporate offices we had corporate offices in there. It was a very old building that just wasn't meeting the need, especially with all the electronics and computer age and all of the things that you need to really run a high tech business at this point in time. And then we had other offices in another building next door.
Yeah. So what happened with the old bank? Is it converted into dust and gone, or has it been preserved as a historic building?
I think it was preserved as a historic building. I haven't been up there in a few years, but it was still an operating bank branch when I left the bank. So it was still an operating bank branch in that particular facility. I think they converted the upper floors to offices, but they did a full gut job on it. So they had to, there was a lot of asbestos and everything else that had to be removed. So,
yeah, I think that's over history. We've lost an awful lot of historic buildings, and I think that's just a great shame to see how history's been erased almost. But where they can preserve these buildings, particularly the really nice, pretty ones. I mean, there's an awful lot of ugly buildings around from the 60s that you wouldn't want to preserve.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason during the 60s they didn't have a good idea of sort of pretty buildings at all today. They're just concrete, horrible things.
Well, doing historic restoration is really difficult because you have a lot of people that you need to please. We did a historic restoration in the city of Trenton, New Jersey, and we had to jump through hoops to make the Historic Preservation Society happy. We had to get a lot of permits that were very specific. We had windows that needed to be made exactly the way the old ones were. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to do historical preservation here in the States. And I think that's changed a lot because a lot of people really do want to preserve the history. I know in Jersey City, there was a huge movement for preservation on a lot of the old historic brownstones. And the buildings are absolutely lovely. And I know a lot of people went to bat with the historical society, coming alongside them and saying, yes, we need to preserve this. And maybe we need not to be so particular and, taking so much time in approving everything. Let's give people, give them a better framework to work from so that we're not coming back to the table 5, 6, 7 times. So they actually went and created a better framework for people to be able to do that historical preservation.
Yeah, so we've got pretty much the same in England. We've got English heritage. That we've down at my yacht club, we've got police barracks that we've just spent just under £1 million repairing the roof on, and now we're looking at getting the inside done. But because it was a historic building, it's had to be preserved the way it was, right. which is good. I mean, the roof looks as though it did when it was built back in the 1800s.
It's fun to be a part of that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So, and the inside is going to be done fairly soon. So they're just raising some money for that. So you left. The day you left, your son was born, which was a bit of a feat. I mean, how early was he?
He was born.
He wasn't working at full term.
Yeah, no, he was born at 35 and a half weeks. Full term is 40 weeks. They say the safe marker is 36 to 40 weeks. He was born. He was born a little bit he wasn't premature by any means. He was, but he did have.
Early.
He was early. He had a little bit of a breathing problem at first, but then he kind of overcame that. He had his bilirubin was up, and if you know that, that's when they have that jaundice color to them. Yeah. So we lovingly referred to him for his first week or so of being in this world as a glowworm, because he had this ultraviolet light blanket that wrapped around him, and he looked like a little glowworm. And it was so cute and so sweet. And but he went from being like this big when he was born, like 20 inches long and skinny to 6'2" now. So yeah, he was born.
Up to him.
Yes, he was born in 1992, and he's just an amazing little guy. When he was growing up, he's just sweet and tender, and he still is. He's a good guy.
Yeah, age 30. Up for 30.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
So did you become a full-time mother at that stage? Did you go back to work at some stage? And what happened next?
Yeah, so I took full advantage of the 12-week Family Leave Act. And the week I was supposed to go back to work, and I had every intention of telling my boss that I was not coming back to work because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. My husband and I had always planned for me to be able to stay home with our children. My boss actually called me to tell me that not to bother coming back because they were having layoffs, and if they let me go, which I was actually the person with the most tenure in my department, but if he let me go, he could actually keep 2 other people. Because of the amount of tenure meant I had the highest salary. He was able to keep 2 other people, which I was perfectly happy with. So I got 9 weeks of severance. And so I got an extra 9 weeks of pay, which was wonderful. And
bonus there. Yeah.
And my health insurance, I think they extended my health insurance for almost a year, which was great. And, I loved being a stay-at-home mom. And just being able to spend that time with my son and enjoying getting to know him and enjoying motherhood.
Yeah.
And then my daughter.
Mother's group? Did you go and have mothers meetings around?
I did not with my first child. When my second child came along 2 years later, my kids are 2.5 months apart. 25 months apart. And when my daughter was born in 1994, she was colicky. And I was really struggling, I'm really having a hard time. Lack of sleep was just exhausting, because now I have a 2-year-old that I need to tend to, who wants my attention, and an infant during the day. I wasn't sleeping when they were sleeping. I was trying to, take care of the house. And I actually had gotten to a point where it's like, I called a friend of mine and I said, Barb, I need help. I can't do this. I'm at my end. I'm at my end. I'm so exhausted. I don't know what to do. And she introduced me to a mother's group called MOPS, which is Mothers of Preschoolers. It's a Christian organization. And being able to have other moms to connect with and go to sit with and pray about what was going on and get really sage advice from other women. You have to remember, this was before Facebook, where you could just go on Facebook and join a group and talk to people about what you were feeling. We didn't have the internet back then to do research and figure out. We didn't have Google to help us figure out how to take care of a colicky baby. We just had to ask either our moms or our grandmoms. My grandmother and my mother had great advice, but they never had colicky babies. They didn't know what to do or how to help me. My grandmom's like, give her a lemon lollipop. That'll settle her stomach. I'm like, what? So I will say my grandmother had some amazing advice when it came to my son, who had croup when he was growing up. And, the spice plasters were amazing. And I actually, my pediatrician actually asked me for my grandmother's recipe for a spice plaster because it was helping my son breathe better. So.
Excellent. So when did you go back to work, or you're still a stop-home mum?
I started my journey in direct sales when my children were little. I wanted to stay at home, but I still wanted to have some semblance of income coming in. And I joked because it was like, I need adult conversation. So I was like, okay, I'll try. But my initial journey into direct sales was because I was planning on homeschooling my children, loved teaching, loved books, loved educational toys. But I didn't want to have to pay wholesale. I didn't want to have to pay retail. I wanted to pay wholesale. So I joined a couple of direct sales companies just really to get the product at wholesale prices rather than retail, because I loved Dorling Kinder's DK Books, which is a British company, was at that time they had a direct sales division. They were then bought out by Penguin Publishing, who put all the direct sellers, 30,000 people, out of business overnight. So I had a growing team with that organization. I love their books, love their product, but it was very disheartening when you're in love with a product and someone else just decides, okay, we're selling to Penguin. Oh, Penguins decide they're not going to have a direct sales division, and overnight you're out of work. I know people who lost their homes because of it.
Yeah.
Because they and their spouses were working in the same business, and all of their income was cut overnight. And that was very disheartening. But fortunately for me, my husband was still employed. We were in a good financial position. I was doing it more for, just be able to supplement, add a little bit extra to the budget, and, to be able to connect with people. So then I tried a couple different companies after that, and I landed with Longaberger, which is handmade baskets here in the United States, and absolutely loved it. But my main reason for starting with Longaberger was because I needed to organize my house and I wanted the baskets. And again, I didn't want to have to pay retail. But then people found out that I was selling Longaberger, and what I found was when I was doing Longaberger, I felt so guilty about asking people to pay a price that I wasn't willing to pay when I was not a representative, that I wound up giving away my discount to all of my friends. So it wasn't about making money, obviously. It was like, okay, it was about, just making my friends happy and having these pretty baskets in my house. And then I got a little bit more serious. One of the things that I absolutely love about direct sales is it's very intentional about relationships, right? direct sales or network marketing, whatever you want to call it, is really relationship marketing. It's really about building relationships and understanding the need of your audience. But I learned so much. They do such a phenomenal job of educating their associates on how to connect and build relationships. I just love the business model for that in and of itself, because of the amount of training that they do. And I worked with Silpata, which is a high-end jewelry, sterling silver jewelry company here in the States, and was very successful with that, was building a team, had a really great income. And then like the 2008 recession kind of hit us, and people weren't spending money on jewelry. They just weren't. And I had to work harder and more. And at that point in time, my kids were in high school. And I tell people a lot of times, you think your children are, resilient, but their problems in high school get to be are bigger problems than when they were in elementary or middle school. And you need to be there for them. So I made the decision to stop working, and my kids were surprised, which really kind of took me by surprise. I was really shocked by their reaction when I told them that I wasn't going to do Silpata anymore. And they were like, "What are you going to do, Mom? You love what you do. You love meeting people. You're really good at it." They were more devastated than I was about my decision. And I said, you know what? God's going to provide whatever his plan is. God's going to provide. Well, little did I know, 2 days later, my neighbor was going to come knocking on my door. Now that you have to understand, this is a neighbor that I've lived next to at this point for probably about 10 years. And the only time John ever really communicated with me was when either A, I did something wrong, or B, my kids did something wrong. Which really isn't true, because he was a pretty friendly guy. It just wasn't that we had a whole lot of interaction.
Yeah.
And he came over to tell me about an opportunity he had just found out about, and it was Stream Energy. And Stream at the time was... It's an alternative energy provider. And I don't know if you have that in the UK, but over here in the States, we have deregulation has taken place in the energy sector, where usually there's a state-run electric company, but now there's other electric companies that are coming into the market that are offering you alternative prices to help keep prices down. It's really about, I'm
with a company called Good Energy.
Yeah,
that is all about capitalizing on renewables,
right?
Solar, nuclear, wind, that sort of thing. So, and they try and go for green energy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's who I'm with.
Yeah, and that's what Stream did. They have the green energy option, and they have the but they also compete with your typical electric companies if you don't want the green option, if you just want to save money. And I loved working with that company, and it was a really great company to work with. I felt like I was part of something big that was happening, and the people in home office were so easy to work with. And I was building it once again, building a team. But I was also in that element where I was teaching, like I was working from stage. We would have conferences, and I was always one of the presenters. I was running a women of power, get it? Women of power energy.
Yeah.
Group that was just connecting on a monthly basis, just helping one another grow their businesses, and just being an encouragement, and always taking that extra step of leadership. And I found that with all the companies that I was with, that there was always that extra step of leadership that I would step into. And I was working with a company on a nonprofit program, and they made a decision to... And one of the things that they had said to me was, we do one thing and we do it well. We do energy. That's it. That's all we'll ever do. They brought a new board of directors in, because the owner of the company really wanted to step back and spend more time with his family, which I could highly respect. Love the man to pieces. He deserves it. He's done a lot. He's done a lot for a lot of people. And when he brought in this new board, they brought in a marketing consultant that told them what they were doing wrong with the company. And they started to make some shifts that just didn't align with the belief system that I had in place for my business with that company. Yeah. And I got to a point where I was actually at the same time stepping into a leadership role with a networking organization for women that I felt really compelled to help these women with their businesses. So it was kind of dual role here with that leadership piece. And when I stepped into that role as a leader, I started to look for opportunities to help the women that I was networking with. And one of the pieces that I found was that they're really struggling with their 30-second message. Well, because of all the training that I had with direct sales, yeah. I knew how to do it. I knew what it meant to create a message that really connected with your audience. And I started helping the people in my network. And then word got out that I was helping people in my network. And I started getting asked to speak to other groups and present. And that was the catalyst when Stream kind of changed their ideology and started offering mobile telephone and security, which just like, this is not me. This is not what I want to do. I don't want to have to figure something else out. So I was happy staying in the lane of energy.
Yeah.
They started changing things and I'm like, and it just didn't feel authentic to me anymore because I almost felt a little bit betrayed because it was like, I really believed that energy was where we needed to stay. Yeah. But I know they made a lot of decisions based on what was happening in the industry. A lot of states started to block alternative sources. They started to say, no, we're not going to deregulate in our state, where, they started pushing back. And I also look at it this way, and I tell a lot of people this, I lost friends, which was not easy. I lost friends because of not so much the business itself. They trusted me to join this business, but what would happen was some of the states really pushed back and said, no, we're going to drop our prices. Like they butchered their prices. And now we had people that were locked into 24-month contracts at a higher rate than what the state was offering, and couldn't get out of those contracts because Stream had already gone and bought all their energy to make sure that they got the best price possible. I lost friends.
Yeah.
They got mad at me because they trusted me.
Yeah.
And that was hard to swallow. That was really hard to swallow. And it's like,
well, I guess that you couldn't really see that coming.
No one could see it coming.
You couldn't really, if they looked at it, you weren't to blame.
Right. But it's just, it's like, then somebody said to me, somebody said, it was funny because I said that one time about, I lost friends. I'm like, well, somebody said to me, well, if they decided that they weren't going to be your friend because of that, maybe they weren't such a good friend after all.
Yeah, possibly be another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
When a true friend would have looked at it and said, no, it's not right.
Yeah, it's hard though, so when that was, and absolutely right. You can't control the things that happen in industry. And I think that was part of the catalyst for me to say to my husband, honey, I think I found what I'm going to do now. I think I'm going to start my own business. And when I told him what I was doing with 30-second success, he's like, are people going to pay you for that? I'm like, they already are. It's all good. They already are. So I had waited. I really kind of tested it for a year and kind of put it out there and really, really figured out how I wanted to run my business. It took me a whole year to really kind of step into it as, really pushing forward and saying, okay, this is what I want to do. Because, a lot of people have great ideas and they all want to tell you how to do it. But at the end of the day, it has to be what you're comfortable with and what your vision is.
Yeah. So how long have you been at it now then?
So I'm in my 6th year. April will be 6 years with 30-second success. So I absolutely love what I'm doing.
So you got the hang of it now then?
Yes. And I've tried some things that didn't quite work. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's not do that again.
Yeah. So I guess it's a bit like firing a rifle. You get down, you test and adjust, and you let the first shot go down the range, and And if it hasn't quite hit the target, then you readjust your sights and readjust your position and have another go. So,
yeah.
And it's, I guess it's now working for you.
It is. And I absolutely love what I do. I love the people that I get to work with. My clients are amazing. They have such courage for the work that they're doing, and they want to be able to communicate that well. So that's what they're seeking. They're seeking someone to help them understand exactly what it is they're delivering for their clients day in and day out, and being able to communicate that well. So it's beautiful to see. It's the impactful work that I get to witness that my clients are doing is just amazing. I feel like I'm part of something big, that's for sure.
So what is it all about? What's this 30 seconds all about?
Well, 30-second success, it's really about crafting that 30-second message for networking in video, right? That, a lot of people call it the elevator pitch or the elevator speech. It's the message about what it's that really drives people to want to get to know more about you and what you do.
It's the hook.
Yes.
Once you get them on the hook,
that's why I say
start reeling them in.
Right. Well, and it's really about giving people just enough information to make them curious and want to know more. It's how do you get someone to have a conversation with you to want to know more about what you do? And yes, sometimes it is a hook or a pitch, but more importantly, it's that intentional message that connects with emotion, right? When we can connect with the emotion of our audience, we create curiosity and we get them interested in wanting to have a conversation. And that's more where the magic happens. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding that you don't have to tell everybody, you don't have to tell people everything that you do when you're standing in front of them. Yeah. Right. That's not the time in a networking environment or in the grocery store line to really kind of, we call it verbal vomit, where you throw up all over them by just talking like blah, 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 and all these things come out and people are kind of going, okay, wait, too much, TMI. It's giving them just enough to pique their curiosity. It's really about being intentional about what you share so that people want to know more.
Yeah, so I guess it's putting enough bait on the hook to be able to get them to bite, and then you can start reeling them in.
Yeah. And you can do that just with your personality, right? You can reel them in by just being genuine and caring and nurturing and being respectful of their time.
So here we are then. So you're a success.
I am, and I love what I do. And, we had talked a little bit about, my work. There's so many opportunities to connect with people. I love being on stage. It's a big piece. And I think a lot of that training came from being in, network marketing. And I've had the opportunity to be on stage, and I get super jazzed. People think I'm crazy. I love being on stage. Like I get like goosebumps because I'm so excited to share the information that I have that I think everybody needs to know. And, speakers are like that, public speakers. It's so funny because, a lot of public speakers are introverts. I'm an introvert at heart. So for me to network, I really need to prepare. Same thing with being on stage. I need to prepare. It's who I am. Even showing up on podcasts. Yes, I'm having a one-on-one conversation, but I still need to prepare because in my head, I have to go, wait, there's a bigger audience seeing all of this. So, I talk a lot about networking like an introvert, and introverts have a methodology when it comes to networking. They really get creative in their preparation and understand who it is they want to network with. In my book, 30-Second Success, I go, break it down. There's a specific formula on how to be successful with your 30-second message. I teach it everywhere. I teach it from stage. I teach it when I'm doing workshops. I teach it in my book. It's easy to get to. But there's a specific formula that I learned years ago that I made it my own, and it works really well. And it doesn't have to be hard. It really doesn't have to be hard. And a lot of it just starts with understanding who your ideal client is.
I think that's the key message.
Mm-hmm.
So did you get all of this love of being on the stage from your early school days when you was in junior high doing your plays? Did you get the adulation back then that you crave for now when you go up on the stage?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that, but it's also a combination of my dad and his influence on my life. My dad is such a giver. Actually, my dad was such a giver. My dad just passed away in November. But my dad has always been such an influence on my life with connecting with people. He loves to connect with people. We used to joke, we'd go on vacation and just love to watch him, because he could literally be standing in a line at Disney and there would be a ton of people like engaged with my dad because he would just start asking people questions and joking around, and like he wouldn't know people, but you would swear that he knew everybody. He was just that kind of person. And he went to Israel one time and ran into someone he knew, like Dad. Because he was so engaging and took the time to meet people, listen to them, have conversations with them, that he was comfortable being in front of a whole group of people or just one-on-one with someone. And growing up and watching that, I think had a big influence on what I do now. Being a good listener is a big part of that. Asking great quality questions that get people to open up is important. And, I think a lot of it comes from that. And just being a performer in school was a big piece of it. A lot of the things that I learned when I was in school it really lends to what I do now. Yeah.
I guess the way I look at it is I've got two of these, one of these, and that's the proportion that you should use it in when you're having a conversation with somebody.
Absolutely.
That's the way you get the best out of somebody.
Yeah. And I think too is not just getting the best out of them, but giving them the gift of being heard.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
People feel so connected to you when you've given them the gift of being heard. And that's really a lot of times it's asking them good quality questions, listening to what they have to say, and then repeating it back.
Yeah. I'm still working on it.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
You brought me right back to that middle school stage, and I'm like, he's got a point there.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.